Good morning and welcome to the 2014 AHR Expo here in New York City. I'm Dan Foley with PHC News. I'm also a mechanical contractor based out of Washington, D.C. I'm here with Joe Langlois with the ECR International. Good morning, Joe.
Nice to see you again, Dan.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about ECR International.
Sure. ECR International is the parent company, and we sell a variety of brands under that umbrella. Some of our main brands would be the Utica as well as the Dunkirk boiler line. We also offer Argo electric boilers, as well as Olson furnaces, as well as a full line of air conditioning equipment under the EMI, RetroAir, and EnvioAir products. So what I want to do, Dan, today is talk a little bit about the 299 boiler. And as you recall, we kind of showed you a little precursor of this boiler. What was it, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago?
A year and a half ago, I saw a beta test of this boiler at my shop when you came down, and now it looks like it's all put together now. So tell me about it.
It is. This is our 299,000 input capacity product. You're dealing with a boiler, condensing technology, obviously pre-mixed gas valve. Some of the unique features that we have is we integrate the low water cutoff. That's an advantage for the installing contractor. As you well know, Dan, what you're going to find is different codes in different areas will require those types of devices. I'm sure you've run into that in your experience.
In our market, it's a requirement. We use IMC. It's a requirement. A lot of manufacturers use a pressure switch. Code officials don't approve that. So now we've got to put an external low water cutoff.
That's a very good point.
So now you've got it built right into it. I like that.
Yep. As well as not only is it not a pressure switch, it's a traditional low water cutoff, and it has a test function. So when your inspector comes in, he can push the button, watch the product actually no longer fire. That means that he can see the condition in which the control is operating.
Very nice.
The other thing that we do that is somewhat unique is that we build in the primary secondary piping system internal in the boiler. And why is that important? Because if you don't do that, then your pressure drop through your system, depending on the zones, what's flowing, can impact what happens in the boiler. By putting on the onboard pump and the built-in primary secondary loop, that allows the installing contractor to connect this almost like a traditional boiler, i.e. you can go in and out the supply and return connections. You don't have to worry about any closely spaced tees. You can pipe out of this and then do your normal trim outs. I believe you would be dealing with products like this whereby you would not necessarily be required to put in those other types of devices.
Let me make sure I understand this, Joe. Typically when we install a condensing boiler, we'd have a separate hydraulic separator, or commonly called low loss header. Are you saying now I do not need that product, that it's built into this boiler? Is that accurate?
That's correct. That's very accurate. And what this is doing is this is always ensuring proper flow through the heat exchanger. And I'm going to show you a little bit about the uniqueness of our heat exchanger design in a minute. But that always maintains that proper flow rate, and then it's not impacted by what's happening in your system.
Right.
Now, you also want to realize that with that type of a design, and when you're dealing with that, you can then take multiple boilers like this, and because each boiler has its own built-in primary secondary piping system, if you choose to, you can shut off an isolation valve inside the boiler and then pipe primary secondary external if you wanted to put 5, 6 boilers together, thereby saving you the cost of an additional pump.
We do that a lot. Let's talk about a cascade system. Do you have an internal control to cascade that, or will you use an external BMS to control the cascade?
Actually, the internal control on this boiler, this is an Argus control module that's capable of taking care of up to 8 boilers in a cascading sequence.
Sure.
So that means that you adjust the primary control. The primary control acts as the primary, and then your other boilers become the boilers that are added in based on the load condition.
That's a great feature. It saves the expense and the wiring of an external control to have it built right in. And it looks like it's a plain English control.
That's correct.
No codes, no EO2,
no. You're going to deal with a display. You're going to deal with something that says block. Or you're going to deal with more along the lines of what I'm going to refer to as text English. Right. Now, you will also at some point you may see a text English with a number associated with it. Why? Because that allows the contractor, there might be multiple things within the circuit to look for as the contractor is doing his troubleshooting.
Well, that's helpful because we always leave the I&O manual on the job, come back 4 or 5 years later and it may not be there. We need to quickly determine what's the problem. Is it a flame failure? Is it a pressure lockout?
Correct.
That really makes it a lot easier to service it.
We've tried to make this control setup as intuitive as you can, meaning you could actually literally go up to this, the up and down buttons, menu, enter, reset. So it's a very, very simplistic control.
Right.
Now, when we were talking a little bit back about the cascading, it's just a 2-wire connection. It's not polarity sensitive.
Nice.
There's a communication module in there. You don't have to use any special shielding or cabling or anything along those lines.
Right. Let's talk about venting. That's always an issue when we're putting in condensing technology in an older home. How are we going to get the venting out of the house? Is it going up the chimney? Is it going through the wall? Is it going out through the side? I see you've got PPS connections
That's
here.
correct.
What venting materials can you use?
You can use polypropylene venting on this. You can use CPVC. You can use PVC. Basically, what your local codes will allow you to utilize.
Sure.
Now, the other part about this boiler is you can take this venting up through the roof. You can bring in outside air. You can do sidewall combinations, or if local codes allow, you can bring in air from the space as long as you have ample ventilation for that.
So you can pipe this as a one-pipe vent system?
Correct. You can pipe as a one-pipe vent system.
What about as a two-pipe? Can you split the intake and the exhaust, or they need to be in the same pressure
You
zone?
can split the intake and the exhaust up to a certain limitation. It's not like you're going to want to go. We try to keep the pressures equal, i.e. I wouldn't want to have a vent that's 80 feet long with a very short intake assembly.
Gotcha.
Then you could run into some potential problems. The other nice thing about this that we recently did is back to the cascading, you can actually combine these vent systems now.
Okay.
So, and in the IOM, there is a connector that's put on the discharge side. It's a check valve.
Sure. So
That check valve would allow you to now only have to have one vent going out the side. You would still need multiple vents coming into the inlet side. But that's very nice when you're starting to do larger properties where you need to cascade these boilers.
As far as engineering that vent, would you, ECR, help to engineer that so we know what size common vent to make, or is that in the IOM manual?
In the IOM manual, it details that, and then what we do is we prefer that the installing contractor take a look at the IOM manual, make sure that they understand that, as well as consult any local code requirements. You may have restrictions that are specific to your local area that would say, even though we as a manufacturer may allow a certain type of venting arrangement, your local code would not allow for that.
Gotcha, gotcha. I'm gonna put my contractor hat on for a minute. You sell me the boiler and then you're out of the picture. I got to come back 3 or 4 or 5 years later and service this thing.
Correct.
Some boilers are extremely difficult to service, and I can assure you when that happens, guess what happens? They don't get serviced.
They don't get serviced.
So tell me how you're going to service this. How do I get to the heat exchanger to clean that out? How do I get to the drain to flush that out?
Let's talk a little bit about that, and we'll take that one at a time.
Yep.
One of the nice things you have here is if you look at this, you have a clipped turnbuckle. If I were to unsnap that turnbuckle, this whole control panel piece lifts up and can be swung out of the way. That allows you full access to the pump arrangement. As you notice, your gas valve, as well as your inducer, as well as your ignition system, they're all towards the front of the product. If you need to service the burner sets, there's 4 bolts on here. You lift this up. We have a flexible gas line connection point here. Obviously, you'd shut off your gas and you'd shut off your power. You can lift that up, now you can access the burner. And then let me take you through that part of the servicing, and then when we show you the actual heat exchanger, you can see how easy it is to service by the openness of the heat exchanger.
Sure.
Now, you also had asked about the drain connection. One of the things that we utilize on the boiler, this is a polypropylene flue collector, and underneath that is a clear built-in drain assembly. What does that mean for the contractor? It means you can look and you can see if you're getting sedimentation, you can see if you're getting any kind of buildup in that, and then that indicates you may have to want to go in there and flush that out. You don't have to take it apart to do that. So we feel that from a serviceability standpoint, obviously, you've got some room in here. You can get to these devices, you can do that sort of service.
I can tell you from working on many different brands of condensing boilers, those are the sticking points. Servicing the heat exchanger and servicing the drain on that.
Absolutely, because as you noted, once you've installed that boiler, then that becomes your boiler.
Sure.
And it becomes your customer's boiler. The other thing that is unique to ECR and our family of products is we also have field authorized service individuals who work for ECR. So if there were a problem, we do have the capability of sending one of our field authorized ECR employed mechanics to go out to the job site and offer some level of assistance there. And we feel that that's critical now.
It is, because I've been there before with a job that you just can't figure out, you're scratching your head, it doesn't work. The homeowner's breathing fire down your neck because they have no heat, usually no hot water, and you don't know what to do. You've tried everything and it doesn't work. Sometimes a second set of eyes can come in and say, hey, Dan, here's the problem, you've missed it, and fix the problem and be the hero. So that's very important to us.
And we're literally a phone call away.
Joe, you got a very unique heat exchanger. Tell me about this. I haven't seen one like this before.
Absolutely, we appreciate that. This is a stainless steel heat exchanger, and some of the unique features are the fins are actually welded onto the stainless steel. So you're dealing with a 416 as well as a laser welded fin, and it's one continuous coil. So because it's one continuous coil, some of the uniqueness of this, as well as the positioning, it's a vertically mounted heat exchanger. Why is that important? Because as you start to condense, you're going to possibly get some precipitants. Those precipitants are allowed to wash out, come down through the condensing zone, and as you can see, the fin spacing is wide open. Why is that important from a service standpoint? You can hit this with air, you can easily see if there's any plugging going on. This would be the area in which the flame is embedded, then as we get into the condensing zone. And we also have a very wide open tube diameter. There again, it reduces the pressure drop. So unlike some heat exchangers that are more compact, that are tighter flue spacing, this is a lot easier to service, and it tends to act in a self-cleaning manner on both the flue-way side as well as the waterway side.
So you're saying we don't need a high head pump to operate this boiler properly?
No, as you recall when we talked about the onboard system,
Yep.
our boiler has an onboard pump anyway, so that onboard pump is taking care of any of the pressure drop in the heat exchanger.
What is this material, both of the heat exchanger and of the shell?
Sure, what you're dealing with on the heat exchanger is the tube itself is a 316 tube material, type L, and the fins are 444, and they're actually laser welded onto the tube. As the outside is also stainless steel. Why are we using different materials? Because the 444 has a better property against higher temperatures. It doesn't get brittle, that's why we do that. And the actual fins are laser welded onto the tube to optimize your heat transfer. It's not a press fit, it's actually laser welded.
Sounds like a solid product.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. What else do you got to show me?
I want to talk a little bit about our new combi boiler that's not quite ready for prime time yet. The expectation is this is going to be a 150,000 input product, and built into the boiler is your flat plate stainless steel heat exchanger,
Right.
a diverting valve, a 3-speed pump, as well as a copper heat exchanger. Now we're dealing with copper. Now you notice there's a protective coating on this. Why?
Right.
Because this is an atmospheric burner system with direct spark ignition.
Right.
So the expectation is this would be a mid-efficiency product, Dan. This is not
84,
condensing.
85%? What percent?
In that range, that's
Yeah.
the expectation, but here again, until we finalize the testing, we're really not in a position to go through that yet.
To make sure I understand what you mean by combi, so we're doing space heat through the heat exchanger and then domestic hot water through a plate heat exchanger. Is that
That's
accurate?
absolutely correct. And the flat plate, braze plate heat exchanger is manufactured out of stainless steel.
Gotcha.
So what makes this product somewhat unique is even though we're dealing with a mid-efficiency product, that in no way equates to what I would refer to as low level of a situation where a customer is going to say, why are my fuel bills so high?
Right.
This unit is capable of firing at 2 different stages. It's capable of firing at a 33% input as well as 100% of input. Why is that important? Because it's almost as if you can meet the load that you need whether you're in central heating or whether you're in domestic hot water demand.
Gotcha.
The other nice thing about this type of a product is based on local code requirements, you can vent this into an existing chimney. Obviously you would want to follow National Fuel Gas Code. You also can sidewall vent this, and you also have the capability of either bringing in outside air or not bringing in outside air, as well as concentric venting. And then the venting is as simple as taking out a piece on the top and then relocating it accordingly.
If you're sidewall venting this appliance, what product are you using? PPS? Are you using stainless steel? What are the products?
We're still in the process of testing that and doing the certifications, Dan, so we're really not at liberty to discuss that.
Mm-hmm.
We can just state that we're going to have a wide variety of vent products available for this, and then that's going to be based on the application. Once we know where the actual AFUE lands, as well as the vent temperature, then we're able to make those determinations.
And what sizes do you envision this is going to come in?
We're offering this initially as a one-size product offering, 150,000. Why? Because if you go much below that, your ability to maintain any level of heating capability for the domestic side when somebody's taking a shower is somewhat reduced.
Gotcha.
The other nice thing about this is the control is somewhat intuitive. It's just push buttons, up and down, up and down.
Yes.
It's icon driven, so it will tell you whether you have a call for domestic or whether you have a call for central heating. And it will also give you an indication of the water temperature as well as what they call the flame power, i.e. are we in first stage or second stage.
And to assume that the domestic has priority over the heating if you have a domestic call, or can it do simultaneous heating and
That's a great question. No, it cannot, because inside the boiler is a 3-way diverting valve,
I see.
and that valve actually is the priority valve. So if you get a call for domestic, all of the water goes through the flat plate heat exchanger. If you get a call for central heating, all of the water is going up and into the copper heat exchanger for central heating. The other unique thing about this boiler is there's also a built-in bypass. Why is that important? Let's say we have a multiple zone system and we have 1 or 2 zones calling versus all the zones calling. You may have too much pressure going through the boiler, and the bypass is pressure activated and will, in a sense, maintain that constant flow through the heat exchanger under all flow conditions. The other thing on the venting is, if you notice this little condensate collector, it gets cold in our area. What happens when it gets cold? You get condensation. What happens to a pressure switch when you get condensation in it?
Doesn't make no heat.
It doesn't make no heat. So that's one of those type things. It's a nice little feature. And also the inducer, even though we're dealing with a 2-stage atmospheric burner, the inducer is able to modulate based on the pressure sensor and flue conditions. So as you get into a longer vent length, it'll run faster. If you have shorter vent lengths, it'll run slower. That also helps establish your proper CO2 levels and combustion levels.
Sure. What kind of domestic hot water will this provide?
In terms of capability, here again, we're still in the process of testing. Our expectation is between 3 to 4 gallons per minute at a 70-degree rise. But the final testing will make that determination.
Welcome back to the ECR booth. I'm here with Dan Adams. And Dan, I see you got a new mini split line. Can you tell me about it?
Yes, this is our EnviroAir line. It's our budget imported series. We actually have 3 different series. This is our FSR series. It's a 15 SEER, 115 volt single zone system, more geared towards residential customers primarily. This is our SZI. It's 208, 230 single zone, 9 through 36,000. And this is our MZI. This is our multi-zone. So we have this air handler looks the same as the SZI, so you can have mixed applications.
Dan, are these AC only, or are these heat pumps?
These 2 are heat pumps. The SZI and MZI are heat pumps. This is straight cool only.
Okay.
It's primarily meant for like sunrooms, porches, things of that nature.
Right. So this is a refrigerant-based inverter drive mini split system. Is that accurate?
Yep. It's a DC inverter technology, 410A refrigerant. We've got some impressive line set lengths. We can go from 88 up to 215 feet depending on the size. With our multi-zone, this is our multi-zone air handler. We actually have a 2, 3, and a 4 zone condenser, but you don't necessarily have to hook 3 zones up to it. You can hook 1 up and add 1 or 2 later on if you want.
So if I hear you right, you can have 1 outdoor unit connected to multiple head units in the space. Each of them can operate independently as a separate zone.
Correct.
Talk about the zoning. You've got a wireless remote control. Is that how you control on these?
Yes. The infrared remote comes with every single air handler as a standard. We actually have a feature we like to publicize. It's called Follow Me. The remote acts as a remote temperature sensor. So the air handler actually conditions to where you are located in the room. The default is the temperature sensor within the air handler itself, and if the air handler doesn't see the signal coming from this remote, it'll revert back to the air handler temperature sensor.
Gotcha. Can you use one remote for multiple units, or does each unit have to have its own remote?
It's the same remote for every single air handler, every single series.
Nice.
So it's nice and convenient.
Right. Now I'm a contractor. Let's talk about service. How are you going to clean the filters in this? How does my client get into this to clean the filters, or how do I get in there to clean the filters?
All you do is lift right up here,
right,
and the filter just slides right out, like our on our premium versions as well.
Are they washable? Do you replace them? How does that work?
It's a washable mesh filter. You can kind of see it right in there.
Yes.
Yep. Very durable. I think it has an 80% arrestance.
Right. How about noise? Are these units quiet? That's always an issue with my clients.
Yes, they are very quiet.
Yeah.
They're usually around 40 decibels tops, and that's for the largest size.
Gotcha. Dan, appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.